Greetings everyone and welcome back. Episode 2, Wisdom of Blackrock Depths. Today, another interesting story, not about old gods, but the War of the Three Hammers. If you're interested in Dwarven history, then this might be just the video for you. This is a pretty long book, so I hope you bear with me and all the stuff I'm trying to read, but fail because I pronounce it wrong and whatnot. So, the dwarves of Ironforge Mountain lived in peace for many long centuries. However, their society grew too large within the confines of their mountain cities. Though the mighty High King Modimus Anvamar ruled over all dwarves with justice and wisdom, three powerful factions had arisen amongst the dwarven society. The Bronzebeard Clan, ruled by Thane Madoran Bronzebeard, held close ties to the High King and stood as the traditional defenders of Ironforge Mountain. The Wildhammer Clan, ruled by Thane Kardros Wildhammer, inhabited the foothills and crags around the base of the mountain and sought to gain more control within the city. The third faction, the Dark Iron Clan, was ruled by the sorcerer Thane Thorasian. The Dark Irons hid within the deepest shadows under the mountain and plotted against both their Bronzebeards and Wildhammer cousins. For a time, the three factions kept a tenuous peace, but tensions erupted when High King Anvamar passed away from old age. The three ruling clans went to war for control of Ironforge itself. The dwarf civil war raged under the earth for many years. Eventually, the Bronzebeards, who had the largest standing army, banished the Dark Irons and Wildhammers from under the mountain. Kardros and his Wildhammer warriors traveled north through the barrier gates of Dun Algas, and they founded their own kingdom within the distant peak of Grimbartol. There, the Wildhammers thrived and rebuilt their stores of treasure. Thorasian and his Dark Irons did not fare as well. Humiliated and enraged by their defeat, they vowed revenge against Ironforge. Leading his people far to the south, Thorasian founded a city, which he named after himself, within the beautiful Red Ridge Mountains. Prosperity and the passing of years did little to ease the Dark Irons' rancor towards their cousins. Thorasian and his sorcerer's wife, Modgud, launched a two-pronged assault against both Ironforge and Grimbartol. The Dark Irons were intent on claiming all of Khazmodan for their own. The Dark Iron army smashed against their cousins' strongholds and very nearly took both kingdoms. However, Madoran Bronzebeard ultimately led his clan to the decisive victory over Thorasian's sorcerer's army. Thorasian and his servants fled back to the safety of their city, unaware of the events transpiring in Grimbartol, where Modgud's army would fare no better against Kardros and his Wildhammer warriors. As she confronted the enemy warriors, Modgud used her powers to strike fear into their hearts. Shadows moved at her command, and dark things crawled up from the depths of the earth to stalk the Wildhammers in their own halls. Eventually, Modgud broke through the gates and laid siege to the fortress itself. The Wildhammers fought desperately, Kardros himself wading through the rolling mass to slay the sorcerer's queen. With their queen lost, the Dark Irons fled before the fury of the Wildhammers. They raced south towards the king's stronghold, only to meet the armies of Ironforge, which had come to aid Grimbartol. Crushed between two armies, the remaining Dark Iron forces were utterly destroyed. The combined armies of Ironforge and Grimbartol then turned south, intent on destroying Thorasian and his Dark Irons once and for all. They had not gone well, and Thorasian's fury resulted in a spell of cataclysmic proportions. Seeking to summon a supernatural minion that would ensure his victory, Thorasian called upon the ancient powers sleeping beneath the world. To his shock and ultimately his doom, the creature that emerged was more terrible than any nightmare he could have imagined. Ragnaros the Firelord, immortal lord of all fire mantles, had been banished by the Titans when the world was young. Now freed by Thorasian's call, Ragnaros erupted into being once again. Ragnaros' apocalyptic rebirth into Azeroth shattered the Red Ridge Mountains and created a raging volcano at the center of the devastation. The volcano, known as Blackrock Mountain, was bordered by the Searing Gorge to the north and the burning steppes to the south. Though Thorasian was killed by the forces he had unleashed, his surviving brethren were ultimately enslaved by Ragnaros and his elementals. They remain within the depths of Blackrock to this day. Witnessing the horrific devastation and the fire spreading across the southern mountains, King Madoran and King Kardros halted their armies and hastily turned back towards their kingdoms, unwilling to face the awesome wrath of Ragnaros. The Bronzebeards returned to Ironforge and rebuilt their glorious city. The Wildhamers also returned home to Grimbat Hall. However, the death of Modgud had left an evil stain on the mountain fortress, and the Wildhamers found it uninhabitable. They were bitter in their hearts over the loss of their beloved home. King Bronzebeard offered the Wildhamers a place to live within the borders of Ironforge, but the Wildhamers steadfastly refused. Kadros took his people north towards the lands of Lordaeron. Settling with the lush forests of the hinterlands, the Wildhamers crafted the city of Airy Peak, where the Wildhamers grew closer to nature and even bonded with the mighty griffins of the area. Seeking to retain relations and trade with their cousins, the dwarves of Ironforge constructed two massive arcs, the Thandel span, to bridge the gap between Khazmodan and Lordaeron, bolstered by mutual trade. The two kingdoms prospered. After the deaths of Madoran and Kadros, their sons jointly commissioned two great statues in honor of their fathers. The two statues would stand guard over the pass into the southlands, which had become volcanic in the wake of Ragnar's scorching presence. They served as both warning to all who would attack dwarven kingdoms and as a reminder what price the Dark Irons paid for their crimes. The two kingdoms retained close ties for some years, but the Wildhamers were much changed by the horrors they witnessed at Grimbat Hall. They took to living above ground on the slopes of Airy Peak instead of carving a vast kingdom within the mountain. The ideological differences between the two remaining dwarven clans eventually led to their parting ways. Again, a very interesting book. If you wonder what this book next to, the Twilight Creed, you can only burn those books, you can actually not read them. Alright, that's episode 2. War of the Three Hammers. Again, very, very interesting. If you enjoy the content, feel free to subscribe, and I hope to see you next time.